Well folks, after a year of talking about a show full of negatives, I think it's time I lighten things up a bit with a program I feel is genuinely great. Let's take a look at Forever Knight, baby! The year is 1992. Blue and red lights are still in. Baby Got Back is number 2 on the Billboard Top 100. Sorry to remind you of how old we all are. But anyway, here we have Nick Knight, a vampire and a cop. But not a vampire cop, because we don't need to be reminded of that. He works nights because he's just too damn good, and it's a great pun on his name. Why does a nocturnal bloodsucker work with the police? Well, he's a reformed vampire, trying to right the wrongs he did while attempting to find some way to become human again. It's a delightful slice of early 90s cheese and intrigue, a mix of cop drama and vampire shenanigans. Nick is played perfectly by Geraint Wyn Davies, a Welsh actor who, alongside a wonderful supporting cast, made this show a cool, dramatic ride. But before that, it was a 1989 made-for-TV pilot movie called Nick Knight, and it included a little less of that stuff and a little more of this. Yes, the movie starred Rick Springfield as the titular character, along with a completely different cast, except for John Capellos as Skanky, the only one who was brought onto the TV show. It's important to note that this was essentially a failed pilot. CBS decided not to pick it up until 3 years later. And when they did the 2-part series premiere, they used the same script as the movie. And I mean, the same one. Some of this is shot-for-shot identical. But there are changes made for the TV show, such as being set in Toronto instead of LA. Also, the bums are now significantly younger, sexier, and more recognizable actors. The setup, however, is the same. Nick is attempting to make things right and find a cure for his vampirism, which includes continuously going to a tanning salon.
Comes in 3 times a week and never gets a tan.
You know, I understand being resilient, but chances are that's not working, bucko. Being a vampire comes with its certain quirks, such as kooky living quarters. He can't live in an apartment, it's gotta be an abandoned movie theater or warehouse. You know, to blend in. The movie does suffer from some bad writing. In fact, I found it pretty difficult to believe that this guy was a vampire who's lived for hundreds of years.
I've done a little grave robbing in my time.
That's illegal.
Only in the last 40 years.
I'm so stupid!
Elise Hunter, curator and archaeologist responsible for this mess.
Not the body I hold. Sorry, that's a bad joke.
Man, I'm just an asshole. I have the grace and agility of a bat! Nick is paired up with Don Skanky, who will be able to work on cases during the day. Skanky is by far the best part about the movie. He has great comic energy and provides a good foil for Nick. Look at him stealing this guy's donut. John Capellos is perfect for the role and has a fun time doing it.
My wife's gonna kill me, Nick. Look at, they got bagels.
The most significant change between the movie and the show is Natalie's character, the coroner who knows Nick's secret, who's not Natalie in the movie, but a guy named Jack Bridington, who was probably not intended as a romantic interest. At any rate, they didn't get into it. In both versions of the pilot, however, Nick strikes up a relationship with a beautiful museum curator / archaeologist. A Mayan goblet has been stolen from her museum, something used for sacrificial ceremonies to drink the victim's blood. Nick has a matching goblet because, legend has it, together they could be used in a ceremony to cure vampirism. Who stole the museum goblet? Why, it's Lacroix, Nick's sire, an eternal pain in the ass.
Where is it, Lacroix?
Or Lacroix, as he's sometimes called. Lacroix has dedicated his afterlife to ensuring Nick does not complete his quest for a cure, so he yanks the goblet for himself. Movie Lacroix is lame.
You're never gonna get the goblet. You haven't the courage! No guts, no glory, man.
Now I'm just going to continue walking in circles around you until I get so dizzy I throw up. So anyway, Nick stole his goblet about a century ago, which makes me wonder about the timing in all of this. Lacroix waits until they face off to break the one he stole. Why didn't he just smash the second goblet to begin with? He's had 100 years to do it. During the final battle, Lacroix kills the archaeologist woman, and in turn, Nick kills Lacroix.
Damn you. Burn in hell. Vile diable.
Curiously, in the TV pilot, the woman comes back as a vampire, but it's never touched on again. It's not that anyone in the movie is bad per se, they're just not quite as good as the show versions. Rick Springfield does his job well, he seems like a cool guy, and if the show had been picked up with him, it probably would have been a decent program, although a very different one. But Geraint Wyn Davies is just that step above. He's mostly serious, but slightly playful, so he doesn't seem completely detached, but he's still somewhat threatening. The fact they got a Welsh actor helps to sell the vampire side a bit more as well. The performance feels older. His accent slips sometimes, but it works in his favor. You feel like there's this slight sense of not belonging. I mean, yeah, I guess he was supposed to be French or something originally, but whatever, English is every language. So let's discuss the show proper. The DVDs are of varying quality, and by that I mean they left the Crime Time After Primetime bumper on one of the episodes. Thanks, CBS! So don't expect spectacular HD. But then again, the show was on a super tight budget and didn't look that great to begin with. But that doesn't mean that they didn't make some smart stylistic choices to make up for lack of money. The lighting, the costumes, the music all make the show seem much bigger. Plus, boobs, edgy. There is a downside to this in that in season 1, there is a ton of padding and stock footage. Many of the episodes ran short, so that means showing Nick doing random things around his house while sound bites from the episode play. But, you know, artistically. I'm going to play chess with myself while I brood in my silky robe. Sometimes these are inserted into an episode when he's supposed to be working on a case, so it just seems like he's lounging around while a murderer's on the loose. And some of the things he's doing are just strange, like scooping out of a blood barrel? When did he fill a barrel with blood? Why? Sitting on a motorcycle in his warehouse? Playing mini-golf? Okay, come on now, seriously, he needs a life. The vampire mythology of Forever Night is thus. They can fly and hypnotize people, they have heightened senses like red night vision and super hearing, and the ability to brood while really 80s music plays. There's a knack for extreme eye light involved as well. I loved the wicked awesome contacts they had for the first season, which switched to red after that. The hypnotism is a plot device to cover for any time Nick has to turn into a vampire to fight some bad guys. He can use this ability to make people forget or plant another memory. Sometimes the visuals for these powers leave something to be desired, but for the most part they know their limits and use practical effects in clever ways. But anyway, vampires can be killed by stake, fire, and sunlight. The huge. There are some inconsistencies in the mythology, however, like if Nick can see himself in the mirror or not. By the end, it's just not mentioned anymore, likely for time and budget. Nick gets weaker if he goes without drinking blood, except when he gets stronger without drinking blood. Some of these inconsistencies have to do with changing their mind as they go along, and others are due to airing the episodes out of order. With the increase in technology and communication, vampires don't feed on humans very often to avoid attention, so you have this whole vampire world that blends in and coexists with humans. An important distinction to make is that Nick doesn't go out trying to kill vampires all the time. In fact, he usually doesn't unless circumstances are dire. Vampires are not presented as villains, but complex characters with a very specific food source. In fact, most of the stories in the show are very human-related, or draw parallels to things that happened to him in the past. And most of the vampire stories relate to human problems. And although the show is a fantasy, sometimes they ask a bit much for you to suspend your disbelief. Holy shit! Natalie did incredibly well, considering they were launched into the air by an explosion and the top of the car was freaking flattened. Or how about the time they try to convince the audience holographic stickers have some sort of psychotropic drug compound on them? Or the Cops parody episode. They can freeze this tape and zoom in on someone far away at night and lit by a muzzle flash, producing a completely clear image of his face. Computer, enhance! Isn't technology great? But then again, sometimes the silliness produces spectacularly awesome results. Boom! Nunchucks. Bam! Guy with a flamethrower. Zing! Vampire Jack the Ripper. Why did he do that? I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Nick's amazing early 90s outfits in the first season. Truly a sight to behold. Though sometimes he dresses like he's still in old-timey times, so Each season went through a different police captain, each representing a different ethnicity. In season 1, we've got Joe Stonetree, who starts off as the usual curmudgeonly police captain, with a hat, but is laid back about everything else from then on out. In fact, he pretty much lets Nick get away with anything, which makes things really convenient. So even though they avoided the angry captain cliche, they make up for it with pretty much every other one.
She gets results.
Damn it, she gets results. Don't be a loose cannon, etc., etc.
What's it, a woman? No, it's not a woman. You constipated or something?
Yeah, that's probably it. Half the time, it seems like he can't even remember his lines. He always sounds like he's half asleep or saying something really mysterious.
Saints usually have more enemies than you or I. Sometimes, even more skeletons in their closets. Dig deeper.
You're a good potato chip, Nick. In season 2, it's Amanda Cohen. I liked her. She was tough and had a dry sense of humor.
And what is the point of celery without the sour cream and onion dip, you know? Isn't that what the scoop part is for?
Not even the most trivial matter escapes your inquiring mind, does it, detective?
A really dry sense of humor. Not that they avoided the same kinds of cliches, though.
And as for you, Knight, I think you're very lucky to have such good friends.
Bullshit. Season 3 is Joe Reese. Reese's Pieces if you're nasty. It's that one guy you've seen in everything. He's pretty generic, but gets involved in the cases a bit more. And I realize it's not that hard, but he's got a slightly more energetic personality than the last two. And he will never ever get that drink of water. And then we have Skanky, Nick's partner and all-around awesome character. Skanky is always talking about his wife Myra, his daughter, or food. Food is the general thing that makes him happy. Nick starts out hating him, but after the pilot, it's more joking jabs. In fact, Nick is more of an asshole to him than the other way around. Being a vampire can be boring, so he spends his time thinking of ways to dick with Skanky. I loved their banter. They know just what buttons to push with each other. At one point, Skanky leaves his wife and moves in with Nick temporarily, and the two of them immediately start bickering like an old married couple.
You're not gonna eat, are you?
No.
You're not gonna eat.
I'm not going to eat.
No eat. No eat. After everything I do.
It is pretty amazing he never finds out about Nick being a vampire, what with all of his flying to crime scenes and inexplicable bad guy nabbing techniques. A lot of this has to do with Skanky's blind eye for Nick. He wants to believe in him because he's his partner, so he ignores things or makes excuses for him. By season 2, Skanky is very protective of Nick, and he'd do anything for him. While he is the comic relief, by no means is he a two-dimensional character.
Nick, you solved this thing. Besides, think of the paperwork if you drop him.
While most of the time Skanky is there to lighten the mood, at the end of the day, he just wants to be a good man. He wants to be seen as a hero, to be the kind of person that makes his wife and his daughter proud. He makes a lot of mistakes, like anyone, but he wants to do the right thing.
I don't like the fact that my kid, that our kids won't follow in our footsteps, wouldn't be caught dead in our footsteps. That's right. And it all goes back to what I was saying, that we're not the heroes, that we're the bad guys.
Can we continue this tomorrow? I'm beat.
We need more heroes, that's the problem.
Nick's other human ally is Natalie Lambert, a coroner with an exceptionally dark sense of humor. Catherine Disher is pretty fantastic. I couldn't see anyone else in this role. What could have been a very cold or unlikable character is instead a layered person who is both humorous and caring. Natalie's the one who keeps Nick in check and isn't afraid to call him out. She's his lifeline.
You can be human.
Human. What's more human? To drink a little cow blood now and then or commit cold-blooded murder?
You've done both.
I caught a killer tonight and paying my debt.
Oh, and you couldn't have caught him without the vampire?
Who cares how I did it?
You do.
I love that she's quirky and non-traditional, and she and Nick have instant chemistry together. As soon as you see these two, you believe they've known each other for years. They don't make it a secret that they have feelings for each other, but there are other things on the line. It doesn't feel like everything is about the romance, though it's certainly an important part of these characters, and they discuss cases and life and what it means to be human.
I know what you are, and it hasn't made me crazy.
Maybe you're one of a kind, Nat.
That's what I've been trying to tell you for ages.
Of course, you might be the craziest of them all.